Welcome to Mormon Land, where we explore news in and about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm senior religion reporter Peggy Fletcher-Stack. Joining me is senior managing editor David Noyce, who oversees our faith coverage. Hi, Dave.
Hello, Peggy.
Before we start, we remind you about another way to support Mormon Land. Just go to patreon.com, where with a donation as small as $3 a month, you can access transcripts to our podcasts, our complete newsletter, and all our religion coverage. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/Mormonland. And if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram at mormon.land. Now for today's episode. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir was launched on August 22nd, 1847, just 29 days after the pioneers entered the Salt Lake Valley. After the tabernacle on Temple Square in the heart of Salt Lake City was completed, the choir performed there for more than 100 years. Millions have heard the group's music via weekly devotional radio program, Music and the Spoken Word, which the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints launched in 1929, making it the longest continuously running network broadcast in history. The show is inspiring to insiders and outsiders, but never dogmatic. Ronald Reagan called the troupe America's Choir. The famed choir has sung at 6 U.S. presidential inaugurations, 13 world fairs, as well as the 2002 Winter Olympics, and toured in 28 countries. In 2018, the choir changed its name to the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, and in 2020, it was sidelined by the global pandemic. Former Utah Governor Mike Leavitt, the choir's president, joins us today in studio to talk about how the choir navigated those changes and challenges and what's in its future. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Peggy. Dave, it's a pleasure to get acquainted with you.
So do you have a musical background?
People often say they didn't know I was a singer, and the truth is I'm not. I do have a musical background. But I played instruments, brass instruments in orchestras and bands all the way through university, and I had ambitions that somehow that would continue, but it didn't. And, so it's been a delight, actually, to get back closer to music.
So how did you get this assignment?
Well, as you know, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, people are called to various levels of duty. This is an ecclesiastical call that came from Russell M. Nelson directly, who the choir reports to. And he jokingly said to me, you're probably wondering how long this will last. He said that the choir's 175 years old and there have been 10 presidents before you. I think you can do the math. And then he laughed and gave me a more realistic view. So
what does a choir president do?
Well, it is both ecclesiastical and administrative. I have some responsibility for almost 600 volunteers who serve in the choir, and it becomes their church service as it is mine. And so there are certain obligations that come with that. But because it's a surprisingly complex organization, there's a lot to do. We obviously travel across the world. We have...
Is it full-time for you?
No, it is not what I would classify as full-time. I spend a lot of time, and it's a joy. So I'm not at all concerned by that, but I still have other community responsibilities and a few business responsibilities.
Well, let's get into that a little bit on the personal level. You said it's a joy. What are the most rewarding aspects of this assignment for you personally?
I think just being exposed to the musicians and the music multiple times a week. I get to sit right next to the choir and hear the sound they emit. And it is inspiring and really very cathartic for me. And so that'd be one. I think another thing is just the challenge of being able to take a symbol, an asset like this, and find ways that it can be utilized to expand a mission that I'm devoted to. And I think that's been rewarding. And then seeing people and the way they respond to it. We see people from literally all over the world every week, and we have a chance to meet people when we travel. So it's been a very enriching, personal growth experience for me.
Now, for the choir members, I've been to the practices before, and it's demanding. And they're demanding. And I think I've read, even when like you have guest performers, like maybe who've performed on Broadway, and they come in and they're going to be performing with the choir for late Christmas or something, they talk about how the expectations are very high for the performance level.
This is a very good choir musically, and I think it is by any estimation at a professional level, not only in the quality of the people who perform in the choir, but the demands of the performance. And I think Mac Wilberg is among the world's greatest choir arrangers and conductors. We're very fortunate to have him, following a long tradition of others. It's hard to replicate the depth of an organization 177 years old. A lot comes with that tradition, and it's a heavy responsibility to make certain that it's well cared for.
Yeah. So tell us about what I'm choosing to call a rolling world tour. In other words, the choir has already gone to Mexico, the Philippines, just returned several weeks, southeastern U.S., Florida, Georgia. Next stop, I think, is Peru. Is that correct? Right? The first time? What have been the highlights? Because you go on all these, right?
Yes, I do. And I'm involved in planning them. The highlight is, again, just
the performances,
hearing the music and seeing people's reaction. There is a group of people around the world who thrive on this music. And not all of them are Latter-day Saint. And they line up hours and hours before the performance with the expectation of being able to hear it. And then they want to stay after, and they want to meet the musicians, and they want they want to, and that's been rewarding for me. It's also really rewarding to see people who volunteer. The average choir member volunteers somewhere between 800 and 1,000 hours a year, and they take a week off of work when we go on a travel assignment, and they work long hours, and it's hard, and sometimes there are other unexpected hardships as you go around the world. So that's been inspiring.
Now, the orchestra goes too, right?
Yes, the orchestra goes.
And that introduces another logistical challenge because you have instruments, right?
It surprises people to know that not only does it take 2 jet airplanes, it takes 18 large 18-wheel trucks to carry our equipment and wardrobe and staging and so forth. And when we're overseas, we're obviously shipping it places months in advance. And it honestly is like moving a battalion. It's a battalion-sized move with equipment and people and purposes, and people have to be fed, and there's a lot of needs. It's a very well-refined organization. However, they've done this a long time.
So one of the choir's first trips was, I believe, to Mexico, and a bunch of people got sick.
We experienced the same thing that a lot of people who travel had.
Get sick, yeah.
It worked its way through the choir. And you ask about things that are inspiring to me. There were a lot of people who were sick, and but they performed anyway, and they depended on the blessings of heaven and their own resolve to get through that. And it was a spectacular event despite that.
How'd you cope with it? I mean, did some people have to drop out though?
Well, there were people who missed a performance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I really found interesting, we have a medical team that travels with us.
Oh, yeah.
With 500 people, you're going to have things happen. But what was most inspiring actually was the way they took care of each other. They knew who in their section was ill, and they took them food, and they went to the drugstore and brought them things. They did everything they could to make it a comfortable experience. We had one particular event where we had to have a particular instrument for which we only had one player. And we really needed them. So we made a phone call back to Utah and found another person who plays the part, but hadn't traveled with us, got them on their cell phone in the mountains camping with their children, and said, I know it's midnight, but we need you. Could you be on an airplane at 8 o'clock in the morning? They went home, got on an airplane at 6 a.m. in the morning and got there for the concert. So we have to adapt in certain ways, and that was a heroic
My gosh.
version.
Did they ask you to pull out your old brass instruments? If you
I think they would have probably done better to call a guy out of the mountains.
So this past General Conference, the choir performed along with some other choirs, but and sang some of the hymns, the new hymns that will be in that the new hymn book are starting to add to and will be ultimately fully released. Do the choir like those new hymns? Are they can continue to perform these from time to time?
Oh, they really enjoy them, and it's of course what makes these hymns great isn't just the heritage of the hymn. It's the arrangement that a Mac Wilberg or a Ryan Murphy give these hymns.
As in Come Thou Fount.
They are, yes, they are brilliant at making them something very, very special. And Amazing Grace is another that we've now performed in concerts. It's in the hymn book.
It was in the last conference
That's right.
too, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. And we performed it in Florida. So I think there's just a delight within the music. And I think there's an opportunity for us, actually, because there are a lot of people who are in the Latter-day Saint Church attending services who may not know them. And if the choir can introduce them in a way that portrays their real beauty, it will be helpful.
That's why I think a lot of members, in this case, watch the choir, not for cues, but they're gonna, if they see it and hear it, it might not seem old. It might not seem like they can't do that one. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and there's another aspect to this. I got a call from my granddaughter who said, does a choir just do hymns? And I said, no, we do a lot of different genres. And why are you asking? She said, well, there is a song that I and a lot of my friends really love. And I wish the choir could do that. And it's a number called Gethsemane. And it's in the new hymn book. And I think that's a reflection of the opportunity that's there. One of the things we want to continue to do as a choir is to seek out new and younger audiences. It's critical for any organization to do that. And having music like that in the hymn book that has sacred and spiritual heritage and meaning is a good place to start.
Like gospel songs that are now going to be included in the hymn book too.
Exactly. At least my impression is that those compiling the hymn book are asking the question, what is sacred music? And that question's answered differently in different parts of the world. And of course, we're performing in different kinds of the world. And one of the things I enjoy the most is when the choir can sing in the native language of the country we're visiting. I will never forget being in the Philippines or in Mexico, and when we sing in Tagalog or when we sing in Spanish, and we sing a song that is in some way culturally significant, the audience just goes wild, and it is fun to see and to hear the unique arrangement that Mac and Ryan and others give.
So when did you get this calling? What year?
I actually have done this now for 3 years. I started in 2021, but during the pandemic.
Exactly. That's my next question. Like, what was that like? It seems like I have friends in the choir and they were like, yeah, we had to test every single rehearsal, right?
Yes.
Talk about the
choir
logistics of that.
The choir had not performed or rehearsed for over 18 months.
Yeah, they were showing reruns, for lack of a better word, for music in the spoken word.
We were appearing, music in the spoken word was being used, but we would use a new spoken word and then do it with music we had previously recorded. And so, interestingly, I had spent the full year in advance of my call helping industries. The primary one was the cruise industry return to sailing, because they had lots of issues. And my public health background was they asked if I would help them. So I had spent a year. And actually, a lot of the tools that we used, bringing the cruise industry back, with their permission, we deployed in being able to get the choir singing again. But it's, the pandemic is over, but the problem isn't. We still battle COVID, and we still have to test at various times. We're testing right now, actually, before every performance. And it's crucial because singing is such a high risk activity for respiratory disease. And so we have a medical team. We have 2 physicians who chair it and a whole group of nurses, and they stay very busy. If someone's ill, we need to know it, because it can spread through a choir very quickly.
So for listeners who may not know, you were the Human Health and Human Services
I was
Secretary
of Health, yes.
Did you find yourself during the pandemic thinking, boy, am I glad I don't have that gig right now? Or did you find yourself thinking and said, boy, I wished I was in it?
Actually, during my period of time, there was a virus we thought was going to be a pandemic virus. And my discovery was that the country was very poorly prepared. And so almost 3 years of the 4 I spent in that role, I spent doing pandemic preparedness, developing a pandemic plan. It was an area I became very familiar with. And one of the things I knew intimately was there was going to be no victory over a pandemic for a Secretary of Health and Human Services. So the answer to that is, I'm glad I knew all I knew about it, but I was glad I didn't have to.
And that you helped
That's right.
get the ball rolling more on getting prepared. Okay. So the choir is, I think it's probably fair to say, the church's most visible goodwill ambassador. How do you plan to continue or enhance that reputation?
We have 4 objectives we're working on right now that will accomplish that, we believe. The first objective is to be more intentional about our mission and focusing on what it is we're set out to do. But the second is to be more visible in the world. We have been viewed as a U.S. choir. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is an international church with a worldwide mission. And so the second is to find ways to reflect the worldwide mission and the worldwide membership of the church. And then that would be the third. And then the last one is to use social media and digital tools. And we're very much now focused on how we can leverage the limited amount of bandwidth that 500 volunteers have to produce more means by which it can be consumed and to spread it around the world in a way that people can gain access to it.
So speaking of its reputation worldwide, it was known forever as the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. And then that got changed in 2018 to the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, which is not as global. I mean, anyway, has the name change had any effect on its reputation or its visibility, or do people still know it's the Mormon Tabernacle Choir? You know, it's the same choir.
Sure. I suspect we've all had an adaptation to go to the new name, and I've been among those who have. But I would say functionally no, except for this category. We've had to transition a lot of our intellectual property from the former name to the current name. And so if you were to go to Spotify, you're likely to put in a name, and a lot of the music was either owned under that name or in those categories under that name. And that's taken some time. So it's been logistically demanding to do, but I think people have adapted to it. And
so if you put in Mormon Tabernacle Choir, it like you want to listen.
You get music, but it'll be older stuff, and it'll be music that's perhaps has an IP different than what we And we're trying to work very hard.
It won't take you to the new music.
No.
It won't.
Well, most of it will, if you use the older name, you'll get the older
albums.
The albums.
If you're looking for a song or an album,
right. It's just a process.
Yeah.
And I think that the advent of digitization has also made it easier to change more quickly.
So you watch the choir, and admittedly, there are a lot of white faces. What have you done to increase the ethnic diversity in the choir?
Our goal is to have the choir reflect the worldwide membership of the church. And we're making progress. Where we've expanded the choir with a new component we call global participants. And that's really about being able to have the choir reflect the membership around the world. Half the membership of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is outside the United States. And yet we have to have a choir that can meet 150 times a year to rehearse and to perform.
So they have to be here in some specs.
That's right. It's just logistically. It's illogical we couldn't be as good as we are.
But the church is growing fastest in the global south.
So we have used this as a means of being able to make clear that we are a global church with a worldwide mission and the worldwide membership. And this is a way that we've, and it's been a delight, I might add. It just, the level of musicianship that we have discovered, I shouldn't say that's a surprise, but the people who come and serve for these as global participants are extraordinarily good musicians. And I might add, very devoted Latter-day Saints. And their music, it just adds. And I think that's just been a really happy surprise.
There are plenty of local ethnic singers. I mean, good grief, the Bonner Choir has plenty of African-American singers who are high quality, probably 200,000 Latino Latter-day Saints in Utah, certainly Pacific Islanders. Why aren't there more of those in the choir?
Well, our goal, first of all, is to reflect the global membership of the church.
Right, but those are global members in Utah.
And we want to have the best possible choir we can in the world. So we invite anyone who qualifies to apply. And in fact, we're in the middle of auditions right now, and that's always a tense moment for all of them. So we're working hard to make certain we have A, musicians that qualify, and B, we want to encourage. And I'm happy to say we had almost twice the number of applicants this time as we've had before.
Are the people who make the final decisions of where trying to diversify the choir when they make those selections?
The charge we have and the charge we've taken on ourselves is to have the membership of the choir reflect the worldwide membership of the church. And naturally, when that happens, there's going to be a lot of people with different backgrounds.
Wasn't there some talk a couple of years ago about having other choirs also singing before conference or during conference or something like?
Well, you do see that now. You see.
Wasn't there some talk of having like a preparatory choir or something like that?
We tried on a lot of different ideas.
I feel like there were some experiments.
We tried on a lot of ideas on how can we reflect the global membership of the church. And I think the way we have evolved by having global participants has met that golden mean between our objective to reflect the global membership of the church and the reality that there's some limits in terms of people being able to be here. So
I will say the children's choir was my favorite at this recent choir.
They were fabulous.
And there are plenty of different faces in that choir. Mm-hmm. And they were from northern Utah.
Yeah, that was a beautiful performance they had. And we are delighted when anyone who can meet the requirements of the choir, and we encourage as many as we can. When we draw from the largest pool of applicants, we get the best result.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because you talked about the demands on the members of the choir, on their time, mm-hmm. Their talent, their commitment. Can they not have they don't have other church, what in the church would be called callings, right?
Yeah, you're right. This is considered their primary church responsibility. And that's part of what they undertake and agree to. Mm-hmm. There are times when someone may be asked to do a very senior role, to be the Relief Society president or the bishop, and they make a personal decision that this is something that I should do, and they then are released from the choir.
Interesting. So, final question. What are some plans you have for the choir's future?
Well, I think you can look at our objectives. Our use of digital technology, you'll see a lot more use of digital technology where we can begin to appeal to and perform for larger groups of people in different segments of society without having to move a battalion across the planet. I think we'll also be integrating with a lot of the other things that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints does in a way to both lift their role and also to magnify our efforts. We've begun to use a technique that I think has really been successful when we travel, and in some cases when we don't. We refer to them as watch parties. And when we travel, yes, we'll put 15,000 people into an arena, but there are 200 or 300 locations throughout a region where people are coming to their church meeting or a town center or on a beach or at somebody's home, and they're having a watch party with as many as 1,000 people. So we're almost tripling our audiences in size when we travel by having this extended reach. When we travel now, we refer to it as anchor and radiate. We want our sound to radiate through an entire region.
Mike Leavitt, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
And
thank you.
Thanks to Dave Noyce.
Always a pleasure.
And to our producer, Chris Samuels. We remind our listeners they can keep up on all the happenings in and about the church by subscribing to the Salt Lake Tribune's free Mormon Land newsletter. Just go to sltrib.com to sign up, and we'll talk again next time on Mormon Land.